not starting with the price or the beginning, but the end result of having that coverage that protects your family, that focuses on what's most important, and tying an emotional benefit to it. Pre-frame emotionally. You'll be happy to learn. You'll be happy to know. Use positive bridge statements like "good question," or "you're being very smart about this," or "I'm impressed you're doing your homework." Right? This is kind of the transition. Those were 2 or 3 of those questions. Craig is going to take you through the questioning strategies in a minute here. Quickly, what happens if you lose rapport? And you'll know it. You'll not just hear it, but you can feel it. But you'll lose rapport. It can be lost if you're noticing body language, they're not present, their voice quality changes. You'll be aware. Now, it's not grave to lose rapport, but you got to get it turned around, right? So suddenly someone becomes preoccupied. They're not answering your questions. They become distant. They don't understand why you're asking the question and become confused, defensive, or suspicious. Something you say in the conversation challenges the other person's values, benefits, or rules, all right? So if those things come up, don't freak out. Remember, stop, drop, connect. Stop what you're doing, drop it, connect with them. We're going to get back to it. Here's how you reestablish rapport. Go back and use your rapport techniques. All right, notice that the person again starts to match you. Are they engaged? Are you matching their breathing? Has their voice quality returned? You know what presence feels like versus when somebody's not present. Test if your rapport connection is strong by shifting your posture or voice and see if they follow you. If they do, you're back in rapport. If they don't, you got to keep going back. Do not proceed forward with solutions. Ask them directly if they have any particular concerns based on the direction of the conversation. If they indicate they have a concern, first make sure you have strong rapport before going further in a conversation. So one way to check in is I want to check in with you. How are you tracking with this? How is this resonating to what matters most to you? Stay aware, stay present, establish and keep rapport, seek to understand their concerns, right, rather than be understood. Right, so that's the psychological underpinning of this, right? These first 3 trainings that we've gone through is all about you, the psychology. Remember, your ability to drive value and drive results in sales is based 80% on your psychology, 20% on the skills, tools, and mechanics. We've gotten really grounded in the psychology right now. I'm going to hand this off to my partner and dear friend, Craig Pretzinger, who is going to take you through the diagnosing needs. This is the questioning strategy. Remember, it's not the questions you ask, but you're continuing to establish rapport through the quality of your questions. The quality of your questions create the quality of their answers. It shifts their focus. All right, Craig. Any questions or anything that popped up on your end that we should address now, or should we keep banging and hold the questions till the end?
Let's get the, it looks like everybody's good. Again, guys, we are here. This is live. So please, if you have a question, pop it in there. We want to make sure that we can make it interactive. We got a lot to cover in the next 25 minutes, and I'm going to do my best here to get it to where we do have some time at the end. Okay, so Neil, if you could just keep an eye out on that, and then we'll jump in.
I will.
Toss
awesome. Let's do it. Okay, cool. Let's see. Do you need me to do that? You probably need me to do that.
I think I need you to do it. There we go. This is
okay. Here it goes. Yep.
Live. There we go. All right. I want to make sure here. You guys should see this. Give me a hand raise if you're on. If you can see if it says diagnose needs on the screen. Neil, do we look good? All right, looks like we look good.
We look great. Yeah, we're money.
All right, money. Perfect. That's what we want to be. So, thanks for tossing it over here. Neil, what our clients are really initially focused on, and I see it on the boards, we see it on Facebook, we talk about it when we do our market meetings, it always comes up, right? It's what they are initially focused on, which is lowest price, is rarely going to deliver what is most important to them. That's so critical, right? What they think is the most important thing to them is not going to deliver what's most important to them, right? They're never going to come back. They're never going to come back to you and say, oh, I paid the lowest amount. I'm so glad that when I ran over the neighbor that I only had $25,000 of coverage to pay for their bills. That's not going to happen, right? So we need to look at the outcome of what we actually are trying to accomplish, and we do that by diagnosing needs. Now, the beauty of it, for those of you who were here early, we were talking a little bit about it, but these two steps that Neil just went over is peppered throughout this diagnosed needs. As you diagnose their needs, you will also be establishing rapport, right? You'll be building and establishing rapport. So it's a key link for really defining what is most important, this diagnosing of needs. So we're going to confirm the objectives they want to achieve, not just for their costs, which is what they come to you for. It's what they're conditioned on, right? Every commercial on TV that hammers them day in and day out tells them how they can save 15% in 15 minutes. They're conditioned to believe that it is all about price. But rarely is that the case, right? If we don't show them, if we don't figure out what they need and then show them how we can meet that solution, then we're not doing what we need to do as a trusted advisor. Right? So how do we do this, right? We pose questions. We pose questions that stimulate outcome-oriented thinking, right? We collect as many meaningful objectives that you can build a strong basis for moving to the next step. So that's what we're going to focus on here. We're going to talk specifically about the questioning strategies here. Then we're going to show how to actually incorporate it into your day-to-day. So why must we do this, right? We must Stephen Covey, seek to understand before being understood. If we want them to understand where we're coming from, we have to understand them. We have to understand what their true needs are, right? What is most important to them? And most people we're going to talk to is protecting their assets and family, right? Those are the most important things to them. Their stuff in their family. Well, if they have state minimum, they do not have that stuff in their family protected. No way. Never. We have to identify their pain points, right? What is important to them? We have to move them from it's a transactional situation to it's the trusted advisor relationship, right? We have to put them in the care of you as the trusted advisor. And believe you me, every single person on this call knows 10 times more, if not 100 times more, than the person sitting next to them at the desk. Now you're going to put them next to you at that 45-degree angle, right? But that person sitting that you're talking to, or that person that you're talking to on the phone, you know a multitude more about insurance than they do. And it's your responsibility to bring it. Not just to show them, not just to take the order. I mean, on the message boards today, people were talking about, oh, Geico was double. It's like, well, or we were double. They bounced, went to Geico. Well, okay, Geico showed them half. But is that really the true need that needs to be met? Right? We need to look and identify exactly what it is. We need to get them the perfect coverage, right? Not too little. Certainly not. You don't need to give them more than they need, but Pastor Rose on this call, one of the things he loves to say is that you don't need to be a millionaire to be sued like a millionaire. And it's so true, right? You could be sued for anything. You run over the neighbor's kid, they're coming at you. And they're coming at hot with an attorney, and you need to make sure that you're protected. And all of this leads into the next step, which is building value. We're going to cover that next week. So, be a detective, right? Remember, identifying their needs and wants through questions is 25% of the game. If we do this strategy of uncovering what their true needs and wants are, and we're establishing rapport in doing so, 65% of the whole thing is won or lost. If we're not doing that, if we're taking a call in and we're saying, hey, let me grab your information, I'll give you a call back with the quote. And then we fire off an e-proposal and we call them back and say, well, we're coming in at $1,200, what you paying over at Geico? Who is ever going to buy if you're more under those circumstances? Love to see a show of hands if you think that's going to win a deal. So the diagnosing needs questioning strategy is going to uncover, right? We're going to walk you through it. We're going to strengthen that relationship and that bond with the person that you have on the phone or across the desk from you, and it's going to build that relationship. So not only, and of course, we love to say move them into state, right? Get them in the right framework where they're ready to buy. Like if we get them into state, then all of a sudden all those objections, because everybody always asks, well, how can I overcome objections? How can I overcome objections? I'll tell you how you overcome objections. You move them into state. You get them in the right state of mind where they now understand that you're protecting what's most important to them, and then you deliver that solution, they're buying. Todd Benson, an LSP, I don't know if he's on the call. I didn't comb through it, but he sent us a video indicating how he totally changed how he delivered the message this last week after the call last week, and he closed somebody that was more. He said, holy moly, I slowed down. I actually followed all these steps, and lo and behold, what happened? They bought. We have to demonstrate what's most important to them and expose their true fears, right? Find that pain. Find the pain. So what are some state-inducing questions? And then we're going to show you how to incorporate, but I want to bring it at a high level so it's something to think about. Write this stuff down. Of course, it is available in the vaults, which I'll show you where that is. But you know, what did you like about your current agent? What did you like about what your current agent did? Once you sign up with me, what do I need to do that your old agent did? What do I need to do? What is no insurance agent that all the insurance agents must be doing? Right? State-inducing questions. Get them thinking about it. Neil talked about how the power of your questions determine the power and quality of the answers, right? Well, if you don't ask the right questions, if you just say, what kind of car do you have? How long have you been with Geico? I mean, you're just the same old thing, right? We have to differentiate. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with Geico? We're going to get into this. What would it take to move you to a 10? Right? All state-inducing questions. And then we're going to generate clear objectives. What would you most like to accomplish with your coverage? Quality questions, right? These are questions you're not asking right now. Why not? What are the most important aspects of your current policies? If you ask this 9 out of 10 times, they're going to tell you that they want to make sure that their car gets fixed. And that is not why they have it, right? Their car's worth 20 grand, 50 grand, or at the most 100, right? Unless they have a McLaren. But we can't insure that anyway. What is most important? We find out, then we go back to educate, right? Educating brings that knowledge. It helps solidify and establish that rapport. You're showing that you care about their needs, which you do, and then you're going to be able to deliver. What are your greatest concerns about the potential gaps in coverage? Find out their fears. What specifically is most important in choosing your insurance partner? So a lot of different ways to ask the same type of things, but we want to have an arsenal, right? A whole bunch of different ways to do this. Then we have wounding, contrasting, or pain-inducing questions, right? The last time Geico did a review, was it in person or over the phone? We've trained this so many times to make sure that it's said exactly like this, right? You have to say it this way. The last time they did it, you're assuming, right? They did a review. Did they do that in person or did they do that over the phone? Very rarely you're going to get they did it in person. Or then second, rarely you'll get they did it over the phone. Usually the most common answer is review. They didn't do a review, right? But you're assuming it. What? They didn't do a review? You got to be kidding me. So how do you know what you're paying for? I'm curious, how'd you end up with the limits you currently have? Use stories, right? I love throwing a grocery store. Would you go into Safeway or Bonds or whatever the local grocery store is in your area? Would you go in there and tell them, listen, I have $200. I want you to give me some groceries. Fill up the bag. How insane would that be, right? That's what we're saying. We're saying you can go, walk in, tell them how much you want to pay, and you're going to get some coverage. How backwards is that? we need to figure out what you need to protect, right? We need to figure out what you need in the way of coverage. Do you have a $1 million house? Do you have 50,000 in assets? Do you have $1 million in assets? What's going on? We need to determine that. Has your level of assets changed since you were 16? Because that's when you that's when you ended up with the coverages that you have. So I'm going to skip forward here, and we're going to talk about the build a wall sheet. So let me undo this. Now, in your agency vault, which is in Sales Vault, when you go into diagnose needs, so again, my vaults, here's the 7 steps. You go into diagnose needs. Here's your trainings. There's some calls, but to get to where we are here, and what I'm going to go over, you have your diagnose needs sheet. This is the worksheet, right, to follow along with the training. But we have build a wall with key and questions, and we have build a wall blank and printable. This is the one you're going to use in your calls. I'll show you real quickly. It looks like this. This is what you use on every call. So logistically, somebody calls in, or you reach out, you get a hold of somebody and you're doing the quote. You establish rapport while you're putting their information into Alliance, and you do that live. You do that, you keep them on the phone, because what happens if you make an opportunity that you say, I'm going to grab your information, I'm going to call you back. Well, if that happens, then you call them back and they don't answer, right? So you've already created a situation where you can lose them. So you put all their information into Alliance. Once you're through, once you actually have the quote, now it's time to pivot and start the questioning strategy. This is when you get to building a wall. So I'm going to pull up next to it the questions here. And if this isn't in there, it should have been uploaded, but if it's not in Agency Vault yet, it will be in there after this call. But the questioning strategy here goes in line with this cheat sheet, right? So this isn't the one you're going to use, but it's just to help you get through it. Now I know it's everybody should be able to see this now. So once you have that quote done, you have a price. Now you pivot. Now you start asking those questions that we talked about before. But I want to put it in real time, right? Where this sheet is on your desk, you have a stack of these, and you do this on the quote. I don't care if it's a 21-year-old that has no assets and makes $18,000 a year. We have a call in Agency Vault where that was the case, right? We still ended up doing $100, $300 for his coverages because he understood he could lose up to 25% of his wages. They can be garnished. So he does have something to protect. Everybody has something to protect. If they don't want to talk to you about any protection, they're just kicking and screaming, they don't want to do it, then send them down to the general because you don't want them as a client. Every single person in the U.S. has to have insurance. So move on. Because that person that doesn't want to hear about it isn't going to stick anyway. It's going to be a chargeback. The retention isn't going to benefit from it. Move on. Here we go. We start with question 1. I'm curious. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with Geico? So ask them. Get your baseline. Figure out. They're a 3. Okay, great. Now you know that it's going to be a little easier going, right? Or they're a 10. All right, perfect. We're going to unwind that 10. We're going to move them off that 10. But ask more importantly, why? Why are you giving them a 10? I did a call 6 months ago. Lady had Progressive. She gave them a 10. I asked why. Well, I had an accident. I was driving down the road near Ajo here. That's out of Tucson. Not important, but she was driving down the road. A boulder rolled down. She hit this big rock, and it messed her car up. So they sent a tow truck. They did everything great. But on the flip side, her liability was state minimum. So she was happy because she had a great claim experience on a $1,200 claim. But when I posed the situation about what would happen because her assets actually weren't protected, things changed. She didn't give them a 10 anymore at the end of the call. We're working on getting that call up in there. But again, now we move on to the second question. Questions 1 and 2 right here, right, with the current rating. The last time your agent did a review, was it in person or over the phone? I'm doing it twice because this is so critical and so important that you incorporate this. Awesome. How'd you end up with your current liability limits? Where'd that come from? I know everybody on this call knows the answer. It's what I've always had, right? Oh, that's what I've always had. That's what they gave me. I don't know. It's what I've had since I was 16. 90% of the time, those are the answers. And you got a lot of wiggle room now. Oh, okay. So you're 40. You have 5,100 because that's what they gave you when you were 16. Do you think that anything's changed in the last 24 years? Of course. Jen, let me ask you. Do I have your permission to ask you the questions to discover the coverages you need to protect your family and assets? And now we're going to go through the list. Once they give you permission, you're able to refer back to this if you get any pushback, right? We're going to go down the list of assets, and you have to be cocksure. Neil brings it up, and we're going to keep saying it because you have to be cocksure, not cocky and not meek, right in between, right? We have to be cocksure because if we're not, then they're not going to give you the information. You have to be confident. We're going to go down this list of assets. Hey, how much is the home worth? 200,000, great. Any rental properties, any other buildings, any land? You get the point. We get through all of their assets. Now, typically, or a lot of times, you're going to get the pushback on the checking. But remember, a little prelude up to overcoming objections. Don't be afraid of the objection. Be ready for the objection. Why do you need to know about what's in my checking account? Well, remember, Jim, you agreed to let me ask the best questions to make sure we provide you the most sufficient coverage. I can't do that if I don't know what you have in the way of assets. We need to protect those assets. Once you overcome that, they're going to tell you everything. How much in the IRAs, any CDs, any 401ks. Now, the agents on the phone are getting excited because they know that this is going to uncover a lot of ALR opportunities, and it does. Then we move on to the liabilities. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to say, oh, we have a guy. Don't even bring it up. Not yet. At the end of the week, sit down with all of your build-a-wall sheets, and this is just a ton of leads for your EFS. Question 6. How much do you owe on your house? We doing good? Any questions there, Neil?
Sorry, man, I had you on mute. We are cranking, baby. I mean, there's some good topics and things, but you definitely want to close the loop on this, then we'll get in there.
Perfect. All right, just wanted to make sure. So, question 6. How much do you owe on your house? I owe $200,000. Great. Would you like to see that paid off if something were to happen to you? My friends, this is the easiest way to pick up IPS. You've established rapport, you're diagnosing their needs, and now you ask them how much they owe. Would you like to see that paid off if something were to happen to you? Of course I would. Right? Who's going to say, no, I don't want that paid off if I get hit by the bus. Sorry. No thanks. They tell you yes, lead. Now we're going to get into the income. Where do you work? What do you do? How much do you make? Because depending on where you are, a percentage of that salary could be garnished for a certain number of years. Here it happens to be 25% for 20 years. That's a lot of money, right? If you're making $100,000, that's 25,000 times 20. Those numbers are too big for me to work out on the spot. But you get the point. This is where the one of the calls that we have on there, John L., he was making, I think, $18,000. 25% of that was 4,500 times 20 years. It worked out to like $90,000. He saw the value in having $300 for his liability limits. 22-year-old. He didn't know anything about insurance. And at the end, he's thanking me for uncovering that. So then, once we have all this, we show you with the add A, B, get C. here's all the formulas. It's real easy to work through, but you get their total exposure. And now we're going to look at that total exposure compared to what their current limits are, and usually there's a gap. And what happens when there's a gap? Right? You have a gap. Now, all of a sudden, when you ask them, hey, I'm curious, what would you give them now? You said that they were a 10. Would you still give Geico a 10? Future pace them, right? Okay, Jim, let's pretend you're in an accident, somebody got hurt or killed. You call Geico, they explain you're exposed, you're at risk. You didn't have enough coverage for this accident. You don't get to say, hey, Geico, I called, I asked you for, and you gave me the lowest price coverage. Why isn't this covered? If you're calling, or if your clients or prospects or all these folks that we're talking to are calling because they want the lowest price, when the rubber meets the road and they need that coverage, they can't expect to have good coverage, right? And we have to unwind that thinking. Remember, this exposure equals pain. The reason why it isn't covered, Jim, is that Geico didn't uncover what is truly most important. They gave you what you thought was truly most important, lowest price. And that's a lot of times what we think or what they think is the most important thing when they call, right? That's what they think is the most important thing, but it's not. The protection of their family and assets is the most important thing. How many times have we as agents or we as LSPs or CSRs had somebody come in for a claim and thank us because they had the right coverage? We have to remember those times because that's where we make a difference. I can assure you over at the Geico call center, they're getting a lot of calls upset because that claim didn't cover them. But they don't have a leg to stand on because they called and demanded the lowest price. They sold them on price. I want to open it up if anybody has any questions on this, because this is where the rubber meets the road, and you incorporate this in there, and this is where it changes. We're right up with, we got about a minute left. You can obviously stay on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, awesome. Let's unmute everybody.
Do you have the power? It doesn't. I'll go through. I'm starting with Don, because he has his hand up. And I'll just go through. I'm going to start unmuting everybody.
Okay.
I got a bunch of people. We got Jeff Ashley. Hey, Jeff.
I mean, there's a lot of
Noise here.
yeah. Hey, Jeff, do you have any questions? No, I think I'm good, man.
Okay.
Okay.
Don, your hand's up. What's going on, man? Don Ortega?
Okay. Sorry. I see a question here. Okay, go ahead, Don. Do you have a question?
Actually, I just want to just say something. I love this worksheet. I think it's going to really help me because you get those folks that they're calling about price, and you put some numbers together, and it really is. And show them that pain that you're speaking of. I think it's going to be a really good tool for combating that.
Yeah, hey, thank you, man. And Craig, I'm looking at this, like all the questions and stuff, and finding the questions is like a needle in the haystack. There's a lot of gratitude, a lot of thank you for the framework. You know, intellectually understanding that this makes sense is different from having an actual tool that you can, that you can use and leverage. Now, Lisa Faina has a good question here. How would you recommend to break the ice with a customer that are serious, defensive, or quiet customers? So if we can get Lisa off of mute, I'd like to role play with her.
All right, let me get. There we go. She's on. She's on.
Hi. Well, it's actually
Lisa, hey.
her staff. Lisa, she's in a meeting, but we have Caroline, Gina Marie, Gina Yu, and Alex. Hi.
Hi, awesome. Love to have the whole team on. Love your energy, gals. Love to feel that energy coming from you. So who wants to role play with me? Me.
Gina Yu. Alex. We'll do it. Let's go ahead and do it.
Okay, great. So give me an example of their seriousness, defensiveness, or quietness.
For example, last week we had a prospect walk in, and we're trying to uncover and explain the coverages and explain the umbrella protection, and he was just very dry, very rude, and he was like, just give me information, give me the details, give me apples to apples with what I have, and that's what I need. Mind you, he came and he stated that he had a $20,000 Rolex and about his car. So we were trying to explain to him the assets and the connection with insurance, but he was just stuck to what he had, and he wanted apples to apples, and he didn't want to listen to anything else.
Okay, great. This is a great example, and I think if we were to poll everybody on this phone, it happens, the same thing kind of happens to them every day. And what's interesting about this scenario is that this guy actually took the time out of his day to come into the office and be an asshole?
Yeah.
Or was he on the phone?
No, he came to the agency.
Yeah, right. So that's awesome. So here's the thing. A couple things. Whenever there's a challenge or a breakdown, it's not in the stuff. It's not in what we say or what's happened. You explained to me that this breakdown occurred when you were describing your policies, right? The solution. So what I offer is that rapport wasn't established then. So we shouldn't have gone to the solution yet because we hadn't won him over. We hadn't built that trust. We hadn't built that connection. So we don't ever want to get to the solution until we know it. And there's a feeling, okay? If you're on the phone, there's a feeling when the rapport is established. It's like you can feel your shoulders relax. If you're in person with them, you see the shift. They move from being a jerk to like there's a nod or there's a quietness where you're like, boom, got him. Right? So now you've established rapport and you can move forward, okay? But if it happens that you've gone too far or you never got to that point of rapport and they've acted out this way, this is what I always say, right? You just stop. It's a pattern interrupt. Look, Dave, I understand. And if you give me a little bit of breathing room, I honor you. You actually came into the office here because this was so important to you. If price is really what mattered, apples to apples, you could have sent us an email or gotten on the phone with us and said, I want apples to apples. But whether you realize it consciously or not, are you physically taking time out of your day to meet with us face to face? I know and understand that's what's most important to you. You got that $20,000 Rolex, you've got the car, you've got the family. It's the protection of your assets. I need a little bit of breathing room. Let's take a step back and let me understand a little bit about what's more important to you. So you need to execute. You know what I mean? What we've taught you today is going to preempt that situation about 70 to 75% of the time if you do it right. Right? So you'll have the rapport, then you can present. But if it hasn't happened, that give me a little bit of breathing room line that I just went through, it's a great pattern interrupt.
Yeah, we're going to start using that. We started, trying to break the ice, make jokes. We were laughing at the jokes, but his face was blank. So
yeah, well, but remember, remember last week I talked about challenging them, right? So rapport can be deteriorated. I got the slide up there. Rapport can be deteriorated or lost if the person you're interacting with is preoccupied. Right, so they're focused on apples to apples, or they don't understand why you're asking the question. it's there's the pattern interrupt, but also remember you got to challenge them. Like I kind of gave them a little slap, if you will. I said, but not in a mean way. I didn't say, why would you waste your time and come into the office if you were going to be a jerk? I said it in a different way. I said, listen, I understand just by the nature of you taking the time out of your day to meet with us face to face how important this is. And even though you're telling me you're looking for apples to apples, your physiology and your presence here shows me that that's not really what's most important. So I ask you for some breathing room to get to what really actually matters, right? And so you challenge them. And that's where you come from, that certainty. I feel your energy, the three of you. And then you have to have the certainty and the safety to know if they're like, nah, I'm only interested in price, to say something like, you know what? Then you may not be a fit for X agency. You may not be a fit, and then name the agency. And then they're like, oh my, you've rejected me? Right? And then people are attracted to what they're rejected to. And they're like, well, so I've taken the time to come here, and now you're telling me you won't sell me the insurance. And you say, my outcome here today is not to sell you insurance, okay? I know you want me to sell you something, and I'm here to sell you something today. But if you don't buy anything from us, but you leave here knowing that it's not actually price that matters, but it's the protection of these assets, I've served you. And the reason you feel rejected right now is because I don't want to have that call a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, when we've won on price and that accident happens and that thing occurs, and I don't want to be the one to tell you, I'm sorry, Name, remember 2 years ago when you beat me down on price and you said that's all that mattered and you didn't understand that it didn't cover this loss? I don't want to have that. So that's why we're rejecting you now. And sometimes, like in relationships, we have to let them go, but you have to have that certainty. You have to have that cocksurety and confidence to know, right? So you've interrupted them. You've challenged them. If they're still being a jerk, you've rejected them. In either three of those scenarios, I'd say 60% of the time they'll come back and they'll engage you on one of those three. Even the rejection one, they're like, they can't believe they're rejected. No. Tell me, okay, I understand what you're saying. Tell me what